On the 30th of July, 2026, there were 10 people on Broad Peak. By that evening, not one of them was left alive on the mountain. The avalanche came down at 9:30 in the morning between Camp 2 and Camp 3 at about 6,600 meters. Down below, they only learned about it around 10 at night, almost 13 hours later. Among the dead was Nirmal Purja, the best-known high-altitude climber of his generation. He had never planned to be on this mountain at all. One avalanche took everyone who was on the slope. Some of them still have not been brought down. It all started as routine. 8 kilometers from K2, on the border between Pakistan and China, stands a mountain that climbing circles talk about almost with a shrug. Broad Peak, 8,051 meters. The 12th highest summit in the world. Next to a neighbor whose name has become shorthand for lethal risk. It looks like a younger brother, broad, squat, with no sharp point, and none of that reputation that makes people lower their voices. The route along the West Ridge really is forgiving by 8,000er standards. There is no icefall here that you have to work through on wobbling ladders. There are no technical sections where everything comes down to handling your gear. You set 3 camps and a summit camp, you move up over snow and ice, and the scheme is clear and repeatable. That is why Broad Peak gets taken as a first 8,000er, or as a warm-up before K2, a place to build altitude experience where it does not kill you right away. It was first climbed on the 9th of June, 1957, by 4 Austrians under Markus Schmuck, all of them without oxygen. Back then, it was on the edge of the possible. Today it is a line in a reference book. The deception starts higher up. From the col, the route does not head straight for the summit. It steps out onto a long, open ridge and runs along it past the foresummit, an hour, sometimes more, at around 8,000 meters, where the body breaks down with every passing minute. Many people stop right there, at the foresummit, certain they have reached their goal. And those who go on then have to cover that whole ridge again on the way back, already drained, often in worsening weather. That is exactly where the mountain has taken most of its victims. On the way home, along a flat ridge, where technically there is nothing to do, the numbers do not match the reputation. For every 100 successful ascents here, there are about 8 deaths. That figure piled up over 7 decades, and almost all of it fits into a very narrow slice of the calendar. In the Karakoram, there is barely any window when you can go up an 8,000er at all. In winter, the mountains are shut down by winds so strong that a person simply cannot stay on a ridge. In summer, monsoon moisture sits over the region, and higher up runs the jet stream, a river of air that shears across the summits at hundreds of kilometers an hour. The gap between the two opens in mid-July and holds for roughly 2 weeks. The best window is usually named as the stretch from the 15th to the 30th. From this follows something the brochures do not mention. Every expedition of the season goes up on the same days, no matter who organized them or where the clients flew in from. The mountain stands empty for 11 months and fills with people in 2 weeks. In the summer of 2026, the window behaves badly. On the night of the 18th of July, a heavy windstorm moves across the mountain, driving snow. Anyone coming through afterward finds that the slope between Camp 3 and Camp 2 has been covered with a wind crust. It holds your weight for a few steps, and then your leg goes through. Below Camp 2, the snow lies loose. Scree is melting out. The ice is breaking down. High wind and raised humidity hold until the 29th, and fresh snow keeps falling the whole time. On the 19th of July, a Pakistani team does reach the summit by a variant of the route. By the end of the month, most expeditions pack up and go down, and the reason is the same for all of them: snow. David Klein and Ian Overton pull out on the 25th, simply after looking at the forecast. On K2, next door, a summit push is underway. By the last days of July, Broad Peak is almost empty. Almost. By the 29th of July, 4 independent companies are working on the mountain. They have no connection to one another. They do not coordinate plans. They do not report to each other. It is just that there is one window for everyone, and it is closing. The first is Elite Exped. It is led by Nirmal Purja. This time the team has no clients. 2 Nepali guides are going with Purja. The second is Imagine Nepal. Its lead guide, Kili Pemba Sherpa, whom everyone calls Kilu, is going up. With him is his Chinese client Wang Zhong. The 2 of them have been climbing together for 5 years. The third is 7 summit treks. With this team goes Nadira al-Harthi from Oman, accompanied by 2 Nepali guides. The fourth is a small Pakistani group. Guide Sohail Saki is leading the American client Mallory Geis, 10 people in all. At that moment, there is nobody else on Broad Peak. The head of Imagine Nepal, Mingma Ji, Purja's closest ally, is on K2 during these days. He does not know that in 24 hours he will be flying here. On the 29th, all the groups move up to Camp 2. The plan is shared and simple. On the 30th, the move to Camp 3, a short rest. On the 31st, the summit. 6 of those 10 are professionals of the highest level, people for whom the mountain is a workplace. One of them completed all 14 8,000ers less than a month earlier. Another has stood on Everest 10 times. A third holds a world record. A fourth is planning to leave the profession after this expedition. And a fifth was never supposed to be here at all. Nirmal Purja is 43. He marked his birthday on the 25th of July, already in Pakistan, where he had flown for Karakoram 2. 7 years earlier, he had done what nobody believed in. He closed out all 14 8,000ers in 6 months and 6 days. Before him, it had taken almost 8 years. The film made about it went out on global streaming and turned him from a figure known to specialists into a man people recognize in airports. After that, he took on something few even considered possible, to climb all 14 summits 3 times, and within that, to complete the whole list twice without oxygen. Nobody had ever done that. Right before flying to Pakistan, he sits down and recounts his ascents, and he realizes that if he adds Broad Peak to the trip, only one unclimbed mountain will stand between him and the goal, Cho Oyu. He writes about it himself in an open post. It had never been the plan. It was only ever about Karakoram, and the decision came suddenly when the numbers lined up. There is one more line in that same text. He addresses the mountain and asks it for only one thing: safe passage up and back. On the 29th of July, he moves up to Camp 2 with the others. On the morning of the 30th, he sets out for Camp 3. On his belt, like everyone else, is a satellite tracker. In a few hours, its numbers will be the only evidence of what happened on that slope. The device is the size of a palm. At regular intervals, it sends 2 numbers up to a satellite: coordinates and altitude. No messages, no explanations. From those 2 numbers, you cannot tell whether a person is walking or lying down, alone or roped up, whole or not. Only where he is and how many meters there are beneath him to sea level. Everything else is filled in afterward by whoever reads the track. On the evening of the 29th, all 4 groups spend the night at Camp 2, at around 6,300 meters. The morning of the 30th begins in the dark. At 5:33, Purja's tracker records an altitude of 6,166 meters. He is still in the area of Camp 2, just setting out. By 7:03, the device shows 6,430. In an hour and a half, he has gained more than 260 vertical meters, a good, steady pace for this altitude. Ahead lies the section up to Camp 3, a steep snow slope, wide, open, without rock and without shelter. It is not technically hard to walk. It takes a long time to walk. Shortly before 9 in the morning, the devices of Purja and Nadira al-Harthi show roughly the same figure, about 6,660 meters, so they are close together. 2 teams on one slope, within sight of each other, and not only them. All 10 people who are on Broad Peak that morning are climbing the same snow wall, strung out along it over several hundred meters. The devices keep sending points up to the satellite. The altitude rises. There is less than half an hour left until 9:30. The devices register it at the same moment for all 10. Upward movement stops. After that, the numbers do not behave the way they do during a rest stop. The altitude starts to fall, and to fall in jumps, hundreds of meters at a time. The snow releases at around 6,600 between Camp 2 and Camp 3. The mass is carried down the main couloir of the west face. Down that same wide slope people had been climbing all morning. Purja's track shows a drop of about 800 meters. Mallory Geis is carried 543 meters. Nadira al-Harthi is taken down 1,651 meters, almost a vertical mile. Some of the people come to rest right at the foot of the mountain, opposite base camp. That is, literally across the glacier from the tents where their colleagues are sitting. Most of what was written afterward was about people being buried in snow. Most of them were not buried. They were swept down the slope, hundreds of meters down, an open face. What set the snow off that morning is still unknown. Nobody ever officially investigated the causes. The devices send their last points and go silent. Contact with all 10 breaks off at the same time, within a minute or two. There is no longer a single person moving on the mountain. It is now 9:30 in the morning. The weather on the slope is workable. Helicopters can still fly for another 12 hours. Down below, nobody knows. Each of the 4 companies has its own people sitting in base camp. Cooks, managers, staff. Some of the dead are lying in direct view of the camp, across the glacier. And all day, nothing happens. The alarm is only raised around 10 at night, almost 13 hours after the release. A representative of the Alpine Club of Pakistan confirmed it plainly. They learned of the accident at 10 in the evening. "We are all in shock," she said. 13 hours is not a storm, not darkness, not a lost signal. It is simply time that passed. By that point, it has been dark in the Karakoram for several hours. Helicopters do not fly at night in mountains of this scale, neither rescue nor army. All that can be done is wait for morning. With an early call, the aircraft would have reached the site in daylight. Departure from Skardu, the approach, an inspection of the slope from the air, a possible landing at the foot of the mountain. There was time for all of it with room to spare. The entire daylight of the 30th of July was lost. What went on in base camp during those hours has never been publicly described, and nobody has explained why the silence of 10 people over a full working day did not alarm anyone. Although the explanation is probably simple, in the Karakoram, there is no mandatory procedure for a case where a group stops making contact. There is no standard for how many hours of silence should trigger an alarm, and no service obliged to track the movement of expeditions. Every company handles it on its own. The night from the 30th to the 31st of July passes in complete silence. 2 Pakistani Army helicopters lift off at around 8 in the morning. It is not only crews on board. 2 local climbers fly with them, Sirbaz Khan and Shirzad Karim. They are needed to read the slope from the air. A pilot sees a white field. Someone who has walked here can pick out the couloir, the avalanche debris, and the place where a body might lie. At the same time, a ground team sets out upward from Camp 1. 4 people, staff of one of the Pakistani companies working in the area. They go on foot because from the air you can only look. Drones are brought into the search. The aircraft rises above the slope and sends the picture to where it can be studied calmly and at length. What they have to search is not a point, but a band. The debris is spread across the slope for hundreds of meters, from the release zone almost all the way to the bottom. At the foot of the mountain, opposite base camp, 2 bodies are found. They are brought up and identified. They are Nadira al-Harthi from Oman and the Nepali Pur Bahadur Gurung, whom everyone in the mountains called Yukta. Both bodies are flown out to Skardu by helicopter the same day. Al-Harthi's body is later sent onward to Islamabad. The other 8 people remain on the slope. The ground team reaches the lower part of the debris but cannot climb higher. The terrain is steep, the snow fell very recently, and the chance of another release holds all day. By evening, 2 bodies out of 10 have been recovered from the mountain. On the morning of the 31st, a report goes out. 4 bodies found at the foot of the mountain. Agencies carry it, outlets pick it up. It spreads within an hour. Later, it turns out to be a misunderstanding. 2 were brought up. From there, the discrepancies only multiply. A drone flown above Camp 1 counts 7 bodies on the snow. Aerial survey from a helicopter the same day records only 5. Near the site of the first find, another one is discovered. Mallory Geiss is later identified from it. A shattered satellite tracker belonging to Sohail Saki is found in the snow. A backpack lies beside it. Sources still disagree about whose it was. One of the Pakistani companies reports that 2 of its members were caught in the avalanche. And it adds a detail that people are still holding on to that day. The tracker of one of them is still putting out a weak movement signal. Later, it will become clear that this meant nothing. In these circumstances, the Alpine Club of Pakistan takes a firm position. Confirm a death only after the body has been found and physically identified, not by tracker and not by a drone frame. Relatives are advised to wait for verified reports and not to trust the bulletins. The position is sound, but it means that the families of the other 8 spend another 24 hours in a state where, officially, nothing has happened. On K2, a summit push is underway on the 31st of July. Fixed ropes are in place up to Camp 3. Teams are on the starting line. People have months of preparation behind them, and sums of money that for most of them mean years of saving. The summit is 24 hours away, and almost all of them turn around. For a commercial expedition, this costs more than it looks from the outside. Clients' money has been spent, permits have been paid for, and there will be no second window in the season. It closes for 11 months. The American guide Benny Lieber announces that he is pulling his group off the push. The others do the same after him. People come down off the route, gather their gear, and walk across the glacier to Broad Peak, not for a summit, but for other people's bodies. Mingma Ji, the head of Imagine Nepal, flies in from K2. His lead guide and his client were caught in the avalanche. Mingma David Sherpa flies from Nepal to Skardu, Purja's business partner and co-owner of his company. He is a member of the Nepali parliament. In this situation, something else matters more. He is one of the few specialists in long-line evacuation. In January 2021, 10 Nepalis climbed K2 in winter for the first time in history, a mountain nobody had taken in winter before. 3 men in that team were Nirmal Purja, Kili Pemba Sherpa, and Mingma Ji. Now 2 of them are lying on the slope of the neighboring mountain, and the 3rd is flying out to bring them back. On the 1st of August, the ground team sets out upward from Camp 1. It is led by Mingma Ji and the Pakistani Sirbaz Khan. Khan is the first Pakistani to complete all 14 8,000ers without oxygen, a figure of the same scale as the men he is going out to look for. This is his 20th time going up Broad Peak, and Sohail Saki, one of the 10, was his neighbor from the Hunza Valley and his student. The team climbs the debris and reaches for the first time the place where the bodies lie. Until now, they had only been seen from the air. At around 5,000 meters, they find another Nepali climber. He is brought down. At first, he is taken for someone else, the reports diverge, and only later does confirmation come. It is Gyalu Sherpa, a guide with 7 summit treks. The same day, Elite Exped publishes a statement. It confirms the death of Nirmal Purja and reports that none of the expedition's members survived. The statement goes out against the direct request of the Pakistani authorities. The Alpine Club had insisted that a death could only be spoken of after each person was physically identified. And a few hours later, Mingma Ji speaks from the slope to everyone writing about this. He asks people not to spread speculation and not to torment the families with other people's theories. And he immediately explains where he is speaking from. He is in contact with those families. He is not reading the news, he is talking to the people who are waiting. By the end of the 1st of August, 3 bodies out of 10 have been recovered from the mountain. On the 2nd of August, they set out from base camp at 4 in the morning. 10 people, Pakistanis and Nepalis together. By 9, they reach Camp 1. Not everyone goes on from there. 5 men, led by Mingma Ji, climb toward the release zone. The rest stay below to receive what is brought down. The 5 head for the place where the drone had spotted bodies the day before. From 5,700 meters, they recover 4 bodies at once. Among them is Nirmal Purja. All 4 of the dead are carried down to Camp 1 at 5,600 meters. Half the work is behind them. What remains is to bring them lower still, to the so-called Japanese camp, an old flat platform beneath the slope. Ordinary expeditions stopped using it long ago, but a helicopter can come in there. That same day, 2,000 kilometers away, candles are lit in a school in Chitwan, Nepal. Children and teachers lay the lights out on the floor and stand around them. The Prime Minister of Nepal offers his condolences. Reinhold Messner, the first man in history to complete all 14 8,000ers, pays tribute. And Purja's brother says a short sentence that travels through every outlet. He said that he had lost his entire world. By this hour, 8 of the 10 people on Broad Peak have been found. 3 have already been taken off the mountain. 4 more are being carried down. In these hours, it looks as though the operation can be carried through to the end. 10 dead in a bulletin is just a number. Up close, it looks like this. Kili Pemba Sherpa completed all 14 8,000ers on the 3rd of July, 2026. The last was Nanga Parbat. Broad Peak was 27 days later. Gyalu Sherpa climbed Kangchenjunga 3 times in a single season. On the 10th, the 19th, and the 25th of May, 2025. 3 ascents of the third highest mountain in the world in 15 days. That achievement is entered in the Guinness Book of Records. Pur Bahadur Gurung, who was called Yukta, stood on the summit of Everest 10 times. Nawang Thindu Sherpa, in May 2026, took part in bringing the body of a dead climber down from Makalu. Nima Sherpa had managed 4 8,000ers in 2026, and Broad Peak was meant to be the 5th. Nadira Al-Harthi was the first woman from Oman to climb Everest. After that, she went after the 14 summits and managed to take K2, Manaslu, and Nanga Parbat. Sohail Saki climbed without oxygen his whole career, and completed all the Pakistani 8,000ers that way. On Broad Peak, he was using oxygen because he was leading a client and was responsible for her. This expedition was to have been his last before leaving the profession. Wang Zhong was 52. He had completed 12 8,000ers. Broad Peak would have been the 13th, and after that, only Shishapangma remained. Mallory Geiss was going for her first 8,000er, and one more figure, without which this list reads wrong. Of the 10 people, 3 were clients, the other 7 were working. The descent of the 4 from Camp 1 begins that same day. And right in the middle of the work, the rescuers see 2 more avalanches come down nearby. After that, it is no longer possible to go higher. The body of Nawang Thindu Sherpa stays where it was found, on the ridge at around 6,000 meters, in a place nobody will go to again. They try to lower the 4 by rappel toward the flat platform on the Concordia side. The work goes over steep snow, with changeovers, with a load that cannot help itself. Only the body of Kili Pemba makes it down. Purja, Wang Zhong, and Nima Sherpa stay at around 5,000 meters, on a slope that can no longer be reached on foot. One method remains, a helicopter on a long line. The machine hovers above the slope without landing and lifts the load on a sling a few dozen meters long. In Nepal, this is routine. Private operators work there. They have their own aircraft, and you can fly in any weather window. The matter is settled within an hour. In Pakistan, there are no private aircraft in this area at all. The only helicopters are the Army's, and every Army flight requires a long approval, an application, a permit, a chain of authorities. The good weather windows in the Karakoram are short and unpredictable. While the paperwork moves through the offices, the window closes, and it all starts over. Mingma David Sherpa, that same long-line specialist, is in Pakistan, working the request through with the military and the government in Islamabad. There is still no answer. A similar choice has been made in this area before, and it is known how it ended. In 2023, the Russians Dmitry Golovchenko and Sergei Nilov were climbing a new route on Gasherbrum 4, the 2 of them, alpine style, without support. Golovchenko fell 250 vertical meters below the summit. Nilov was left alone on the wall. He came down over 5 days and got out alive. His friend's body stayed at 6,850 meters. That is above the ceiling of Pakistani helicopters. There was nothing to bring him down with. A year later, Nilov came back. He put a team together and went to the same mountain to recover Golovchenko's body and take it home. They never found the body. And on the 18th of August, 2024, an avalanche came down on the ascent. 2 members of the team were injured. Nilov was killed. He left behind a wife and 6 children. The question everyone on Broad Peak is thinking about right now is not whether to bring the bodies back. Most families have only one answer to that. It sounds different. How many living people can be put at risk for one dead one? The rescuers working on Broad Peak know this story. Many of them knew Nilov too. And they will have to draw that line again, each one for himself. On the 3rd of August, an Army helicopter is due to fly from Skardu to Broad Peak. The flight is canceled at the last moment. Weather. On the 4th of August, Mingmaji tells reporters briefly, conditions today are completely unsuitable for helicopter work. Wind, cloud down to the slopes. A long line does not work in weather like this, even where it is permitted. That is the 2nd day running with no helicopter, and every day that follows makes the evacuation less likely, not more. Mingmaji says one more thing. Everyone else has already left. The teams that abandoned the push on K2 and came to help have gone home. Only his group is left on the mountain, and then he announces that he will go himself. He will climb to the section where the avalanches came down 2 days earlier and recover the 3 bodies from 5,000 meters. He names them one by one: Nirmal Purja, Wang Zhong, Nima Sherpa. It is worth understanding who is saying this. Mingma Ji is the first Nepali to complete all 14 8,000ers without oxygen, and he holds an international guiding qualification. A man who can weigh risk better than almost anyone on the planet, and who has never been known for recklessness. And on social media, he writes a short message, not to the public, but to the three on the slope, that he will take them home, that they will see their families. On the 5th of August, he goes up. 5 men go with him: the Pakistanis Sirbaz Khan, Abid Baig, and Shirzad Karim, and the Nepalis Dipan Gurung and Pemba Chewang Sherpa. They reach 5,000 meters, recover all 3 bodies, and bring them down to base camp. Together with the body of Kili Pemba, which had been waiting on the flat platform all this time, that makes 4. The Alpine Club of Pakistan will call this operation exceptionally difficult and technically demanding. All 6 of them come back alive. 7 of the 10 have been recovered from the mountain. 3 have not. Sohail Saki was never found. No traces, no point on the snow you could walk to. His family made a decision that is almost impossible to make. They held the funeral rites without waiting for him to be found, and called relatives and friends to prayer. They buried a man whose body has never been found. Of Mallory Guise, only a fragment was found, and she was identified by it. Where she herself is remains unknown. Nawang Thindu Sherpa lies above 6,000 meters, on a ridge that was judged too dangerous to climb to. The same man who, 2 months earlier, had himself brought a dead climber down from Makalu. The Alpine Club of Pakistan has said it is ready to resume the search for all 3 as soon as conditions allow. On the 6th of August, the body of Pur Bahadur Gurung was brought to Kathmandu. Hundreds of people met him at the airport: family, friends, climbers. The body was accompanied by Mingma David Sherpa, the same man who had flown to Pakistan to negotiate the helicopters. Gurung was laid in state at the Secretariat of the Nepal Mountaineering Association, so that everyone who wished could say goodbye. On the 7th of August, at 9 in the morning, he was buried at Swayambhu. Nirmal Purja is being buried in the United Kingdom, where his family lives. Memorial ceremonies will be held later in Mayagdi, where he was born, and in Chitwan, where he grew up. Nobody reached the summit on that push. On the 31st of July, the day the summit attempt had been set for, there was no longer a single living person on the mountain. All commercial expeditions to the 8,000ers of the Karakoram have been cancelled. The season is closed completely, not by the weather, but because everyone who might have gone up went down.